beat by 45 points. Sorry. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stop laughing.
He's already in a goofy mood. We're on Chatcast number 6. Having fun, chatting through this, getting to know us more and more. I don't know, having fun, talking about ourselves a little bit in a non-narcissistic way, just sharing things.
Just being a little reflective.
Yeah, man. And I'm a pretty private person, and I don't know, just kind of been trained not to talk about myself too much for various reasons. For protection, because most of the time people just want to know things about you to use it as a weapon against you later. I'm sure some person that knows psychology is going to have a field day with this.
I was say that sounds like a Casanova quote. It's like, don't reveal too much about yourself because you could be educating an enemy.
Right, or really, honestly, people don't care. But anyways, we are talking, now with that being said, we're going to talk about, maybe like a tip or a trick or some skills, maybe 1, 2, 3 that we've picked up early on to now, or even recently, that have really helped us, that we want to share with you. And so I'll start, and I'm going to go right back to where we were last week when I went on a tangent about musical theory. Musical theory to me really set the stage for unlocking not just the guitar, but the entire range of instruments that exist. Because musical theory, it's something that is by design that you can go and apply to all these different instruments. And it just really clicked and made sense to me on how all of these pieces fit and built together. And that single-handedly changed the way that I viewed music forever. All for a good reason. I never am that guy that judges your music according to musical theory, and I don't always write according to musical theory. So for metal, for instance, you can do a lot of things in heavy metal and jazz a lot of times too, that's very chromatic. So what do I mean by that for someone that doesn't know? It means that it doesn't really follow a scale, and the notes are all right in sequence, a half step apart. That's the bread and butter sometimes of heavy metal, is to do that kind of a thing. But what's neat is that I could, at a moment in the middle of a riff, in the middle of a song for a certain section, I could bust out musical theory and just be like, boom, and now I have a part that's coherent and cohesive, that makes sense.
Yeah.
A chorus or a bridge or some kind of other little moment, even within a chromatic run, that would take you from this aggressive, abrasive metal to all of a sudden, boom, it bursts out and there's a moment of melody. I did that a lot, and that's one of the things that I thought was the most valuable for me learning music theory, and learning it early on. I didn't really like messing with reading sheet music, which I feel like kind of crippled me still to this day. I can read sheet music. I'm just not very proficient at it because I didn't do it like a band kid does it.
Right.
And they can sight read really well. I'm not my wife did that, so she can sight read better than I can, but I didn't really get into that, and I kind of wish I would have, but also at the same time, I don't feel like that set me back as far. So if I would say that there was like a tip or a trick that you need to learn now if you're an aspiring musician, is musical theory, and hold on to it. Caveats, don't let it control you. I've seen way too many people use this oh my gosh, I keep saying it again, this is the 3rd or 4th time I say it, but judging all music and even their own according to these principles. Maybe some professor somewhere will screech at me and tell me that's the way it has to be. I am not that person. I do not want the person learning musical theory from me or inspired by my words to learn musical theory for themselves to judge themselves or any other music according to that standard. It's just merely a set of tools that's really helpful to create something very musical and expressive by a theory, by like a mathematic equation. Again, it's all mathematics. And when you learn musical theory, you really start to see that, and you see the repeating patterns and all of the neat things from it. But that is a skill that I think is really critical, and a tip or a trick that is really critical. And then if I could just say one really small, little bitty thing that helped me also, that's much more simplistic and practical, that set me way above my peers, is a metronome. Now, this boring, made by the devil piece of equipment is constantly overlooked by, DIY guitar player want to strum. But it is really a huge deal. It set me so far apart. I'll never forget one time I got done just mangling the fretboard, just massacring it. Somebody asked me, well, what do I do to get that good? And I said, practice to a metronome. And I could see them saying very loudly to themselves, this ain't worth it.
It's not worth it.
It's not easy to do. It's boring, but man, if you are serious about being good at drums, bass, if you just think, oh, all I want to do is like sit around and strum some acoustic guitar and sing, no. All I want to do is sing, no. All I want to do, no. This is a thing that I am very strict about. Like, so when I taught guitar, and I have one student now, and I may get more later, I don't know, but metronome. It makes you a better player in so many ways. Mm-hmm. You learn, like especially with guitar, you fall into the trap of speed, right? And you desperately want to be fast, and you desperately want to be the shredder, especially when you're young. Well, if you don't have any way of measuring what that speed is, what the heck? What is fast then, really, right? And so that's my thing. So my 2 tips and tricks that I'm offering up, I have a boatload more. I could talk for probably 6 hours about this, but it's musical theory, embrace it early, and be friends with your metronome early on in your musical journey. And it will really set you above your peers in a way that pretty much nothing else can. To cap that off, to say one more little bitty thing about the metronome to give you some incentive to continue with it is it really is like running on a treadmill. It really is like grinding out the reps in the gym. It is really much like doing the laps around the track. It's just that thing it's kind of feels like exercise. Mm-hmm. Like, this is boring, I don't like it, but I know it's really good for me. It's really good for my brain, it's really good for all this and that. And then when you go to perform for real, you got that beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 ingrained in you, to where when you let it rip, you have something pulling you. You have an anchor, and you don't lose yourself, and it really it works. Anyways, those are mine there. Again, theory, metronome. Kyle, what is a tip or trick that you learned early on or later that really helped, and that you would want to share and be like, this really took me to a new place? Because I know in the previous one you had mentioned, being able to throw away a piece of art.
Yeah.
But you have some other things maybe, or you want to elaborate. I don't know. I'm not you. Take it.
Actually, the thing that I want to answer that question with is almost like cross-vocational, where it applies to like you too, or anybody who's like taking a task upon themselves, because of the fact that the biggest tip and tricks, like the 2 that I learned, are really about like process. So, stop beating around the bush and get to it. But so basically, one of the things that when you're working on a drawing, when you're designing a logo, when you're painting, sculpting, whatever it is that you're doing, when you're working on a song or something like that, is you get to points, and sometimes you start the project off with writer's block, is what they call it, because if you're a writer, that's one of the big things about being an author, is they traditionally are just like, I don't know what to do right now. You just get stuck. And
all work, no play.
Yeah. So they coined the term writer's block, and that just kind of means like creatively you get stuck. Sometimes you start off a project stuck, and sometimes you reach some point in the middle and you're just like, I don't know, I literally have no ideas. I don't know what to do. I can't even backtrack at this point. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so dealing with that is something that I think up until I started like actually talking to people who were in the mentor position or just like other peers and stuff like that, I didn't come up with really good tips. And I found in my experience, in my time doing what I've done, two big things that have always helped me get through writer's block. And they're two very different approaches to it, but I always use one or the other. So one is change your environment. So if you're designing something and you get stuck and you're just like, I don't know, and you can't think and your brain's just going through the same, it's kind of like when you open the fridge and you're looking for something to eat and you close it and you're like, and then you open the fridge again, still the same stuff's in there, but you're like, maybe I lowered my standards a little, well, not that much, and you close it and then you just come back 5 minutes later. You get to that point, you know, with a project, and if you say like, I'm gonna change, you know, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm just gonna put this down for a little bit, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna put this down, we'll play a video game for a little bit. And, you know, watch, you know, a small episode of a TV show or something like a YouTube video that has nothing to do with what I'm just completely change my mindset for a little bit and then come back to it. I knew a guy who actually had a graphic design agency and they were all working on a big project and they were just stuck. And he was asking this, like, I don't know what to do about this specific problem. And so they were in St. Louis and he was like, okay, everybody up. And he drove them all, you know, like 15 minutes down the road to Forest Park to the zoo, and he paid for them all to just ride the train around until they figured it out. So they literally just rode the train around the zoo until somebody's like, oh, I know what to do. It's like changing that setting, it just kind of jumpstarts your brain. So if you get stuck with writer's block, there's a way to do that. The second way to deal with writer's block, that was a tip that I learned that's very valuable, and this is a completely different way of dealing with it, is literally just plow through it. So
that's the method I commonly use, by the way.
Really?
Is just to plow right through. You
just plow through it. And the mentality behind this is the idea that a lot of people, when they work on things, whether it's, you know, their fitness or in, you know, dietary plans or like a creative project, music, writing something, or even like building something in their backyard, a lot of people rely on motivation. And so they rely on feeling, oh, I don't feel particularly motivated right now. But if you rely on feeling, that's an emotion, and that comes and goes. There's so many different factors: how long the day is, how cold it is, you know, what you had to eat, how people treated you that day. There's so many external factors that can affect your motivation that if you rely on that, you're taking yourself out of the driver's seat of your project. And that was something that I learned kind of earlier on, is that what you want to do is not build off of your motivation in a writer's block situation, is you want to just fall back to your disciplines. So you develop little disciplinary strategies on just plowing through that part, and that will get you through, and then, you know, then you can maybe ride a wave of motivation on the other side. But in that moment, if you rely on motivation, you'll just kind of drop the whole thing. So two biggest tips I have picked up is all about process, and it's about dealing with writer's block. Is I either will just change the setting, drop the project for a second, change the setting, try and let my mind have a little bit of a break, take a little mental vacation, then come back to it, or I will fall back onto my discipline and just plow through.
I like that. Now, see, I told you I usually rely on the latter. Mm-hmm. And the ace in the hole there is with the aggressive style of music that I've devoted my life to, is that when you're frustrated, you could just dump that out into a song.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that's why I think that's worked for me better.
Yeah.
Because it just pushes that out of you in
that's
that
awesome.
way. Yeah, it gets that toxic stuff out of you. I like what you said though, when you said when you rely on motivation, you are putting someone else in the driver's seat of your project, essentially, of your art. Mm-hmm. I like that. I like the way that was said. That's a very, very critical point. And to be honest with you, just a critical point about life, period. Yeah, you're putting someone else in the driver's seat of any of your goals, really, when you rely on motivation. All right, well, that was fantastic. I enjoyed this Chatcast.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to be back next Friday.